I'm Juliana Meek of Harmon-Meek Gallery in Naples, Florida. And it's summer. Summer is the time for travels, especially for me this summer because of our gallery expansion. We've been under construction and closed to the public all summer. So I have taken advantage of the time to take some travels. Most recently, my travels took me to Washington, D.C., largely because of the Girl Scouts. I am proud to serve as board president of the Girl Scouts of Gulf Coast, Florida, and the major national convention took place in DC this year. While I was in DC, I took advantage of visiting all the museums, especially the art museums. I was absolutely delighted to see a number of our artists, both past and present, currently on display at museums on the National Mall. One example is Will Barnett. Will Barnett we've represented for many decades, and now we work with the estate of Will Barnett. This Will Barnett is in my personal collection, and I love it, so it's not for sale, but I wanted to show you an example of a Will Barnett, and I was very pleased to see that Will Barnett was on display at the Museum of American Art on the National Mall. I'm going to share with you the photo of that Will Barnett, along with several other artists that I found while I was visiting the museums. We'll start with the Hirshhorn Museum, largely because the Hirshhorns were wonderful patrons and friends of our gallery. On exhibit was a work by Stanton McDonald Wright, and he was the co-founder of the Synchronism movement. Also on display was a work by Milton Avery. His widow, Sally Avery, chose our gallery as one of a handful of galleries to represent the Milton Avery estate after his passing. Sally Avery always referred to us as her little gallery on the edge of the Everglades. We were very pleased to work with the estate, and we did sell many Averys in that time. Occasionally, we do get them back on resale, but there's such a high demand for Avery that we usually sell them again before we can even put them on our walls. The next museum where I found works by artists we represented, both past and present, is the Museum of American Art. Admittedly, these works were on display in the racks section, which is at the very top of the museum. There's 2 levels of extra racks of works from all different eras of American art. I do encourage you to venture up to this section because it is absolutely fascinating. You can spend as much time in those going through those racks as you can in the rest of the museum practically. In this section, there are 3 artists that we have represented over the years, including the Will Barnett, that's in the lower left corner. In the middle lower portion with the figure with the guitar, that's a Milton Avery that I talked about at the Hirshhorn. And then there's also 2 Byron Browns, top right corner, and then middle, the small painting in the middle, which I'll show you a close-up of. This is a close-up of the Will Barnett that was on display in this section. On the other side was another Byron Brown and also a Balcom Green. Green and Brown were very good friends, and they were a part of the major abstract movement happening in the early 1930s. Our next stop brings us to the National Gallery of Art. Here we found an entire room dedicated to Alexander Calder, who we did show in the 1970s. Our final stop is with Senator Rick Scott's office, where I arranged to have on loan a work by Hunt Slonim, Abe Lincoln appropriately. Now, if you stuck with me this far, I'm going to share with you a bonus story. This work you're looking at is by Max Ernst. We represented his son, Jimmy Ernst, for many years, and also his granddaughter, Amy Ernst. I'm going to share with you a story that Jimmy Ernst told my father. Jimmy Ernst was good friends with Jackson Pollock, and this is readily recognizable as a Jackson Pollock painting, which is on display currently at the National Gallery of Art. This is also a work by Jackson Pollock, but from much earlier in his career when he was a regionalist painter, an American regionalist. This is not recognizable compared to where he was at later with the abstract expressionism movement and what he was doing here, and later what he's recognized for. Now, the story is that Jimmy Ernst told my dad that Jackson Pollock did want to return to an earlier style of painting, that regionalist style, but his art dealer wouldn't let him. and it greatly depressed Jackson Pollock. So Jimmy Ernst advised my father, who was a young art dealer at the time, never to tell an artist what to paint. Let the artist explore their own creativity, go where they want. And we have stuck with that ever since as our policy in the gallery. Thank you for listening as I shared with you all the artists that we've represented over the years that I found along the National Mall.